The mission to Mars had been long and grueling for the group of astronauts. After months of being cooped up in their small spacecraft, they were finally approaching the red planet. But as they descended towards the planet's surface, something unexpected happened. They detected a strange energy signal emanating from deep beneath the Martian soil. As the team of astronauts landed on the surface of Mars, they immediately set out to investigate the source of the signal. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon a strange and ancient alien artifact buried deep beneath the Martian soil. The artifact was a mysterious black orb, which pulsated with a strange energy. Despite their caution, one of the crew members couldn't resist touching the orb. Instantly, a malevolent force was unleashed. The artifact came to life, and the energy emanating from it began to swirl around the crew, enveloping them in a cold, dark embrace. At first, the crew tried to fight back against the strange force. They tried to use their technology and scientific knowledge to understand what was happening, but it was no use. The force was too powerful, and it began to consume them one by one. The crew began to see strange hallucinations, and they heard voices whispering in their minds. They saw visions of ancient civilizations destroyed by the same malevolent force they had unleashed. They saw worlds consumed by darkness, and they knew that they were next. Slowly but surely, the force began to take control of their minds, and the crew members began to turn against each other. They became paranoid and delusional, seeing threats where there were none. They fought amongst themselves, each believing that the others were trying to kill them. As the situation became more and more dire, the crew realized that they needed to take drastic action if they were to survive. They came up with a plan to destroy the artifact, hoping that it would sever the connection between the malevolent force and themselves. With great effort, they managed to gather all of their equipment and make their way back to their spacecraft. But as they tried to launch off the planet, the malevolent force was too strong. It lashed out, tearing their ship apart and sending them hurtling towards the void of space. As the crew tumbled through space, they realized that there was no hope for them. The malevolent force had consumed them completely, and there was no way to fight back. They knew that they were doomed to spend the rest of eternity drifting through the cosmos, consumed by the darkness they had unleashed. In the end, the crew's mission to Mars was a tragic failure. They had uncovered an ancient alien artifact, but in doing so, they had unleashed a malevolent force that had destroyed them all. It was a cautionary tale for future space missions, a warning to tread carefully when exploring the unknown depths of the universe. In a world ravaged by war and disease, the few remaining survivors struggled to stay alive amidst the chaos and destruction. The air was thick with ash and smoke, and the ground was barren and lifeless. In this wasteland, only the strongest and most resilient could survive, and even then, there was no guarantee of safety. Among the survivors was a small group of individuals who had banded together for mutual protection. They were a ragtag bunch from different walks of life and different parts of the world, but they shared a common goal: to find a safe haven where they could rebuild their lives and start anew. As they journeyed across the barren wasteland, they encountered many dangers, from raiders and scavengers to wild animals and cannibalistic mutants. These mutants were once human, but the radiation and disease had twisted their bodies and minds, turning them into savage, bloodthirsty beasts. The mutants were fast and agile, and they hunted in packs. They could smell the scent of human flesh from miles away, and they were relentless in their pursuit. The survivors had to be constantly on guard, watching their every move and listening for any sound that might betray their presence. One day, as they were trekking through a desolate landscape, they came across an abandoned military bunker. It was a massive concrete structure, fortified with steel walls and razor-wire fences. The survivors knew that it would be a perfect place to fortify and defend against the mutants. They entered the bunker cautiously, scanning every corner and hallway for signs of danger. The place was deserted, and it seemed like it had been abandoned for years. The survivors began to clear out the debris and secure the perimeter, fortifying the walls and setting up traps and alarms. As they settled in, they began to discover strange things about the bunker. There were signs of recent activity, such as fresh food and supplies, but no signs of any living humans. They also found strange symbols and markings on the walls and floors, which they couldn't decipher. As days turned into weeks, the survivors began to experience strange phenomena. They heard whispers in the halls, footsteps in the darkness, and shadows moving on their own. They started to see things that they couldn't explain, like apparitions and hallucinations. They soon realized that the bunker was haunted by the ghosts of its former occupants, who had died in the war and were trapped in the afterlife. But the survivors had little time to worry about ghosts, as the mutants were closing in on them. They had been tracking the survivors, and they knew that they were trapped in the bunker. The mutants began to pound on the walls and doors, trying to break in and feast on the flesh of the living. The survivors knew that they had to make a final stand, or they would be overrun by the mutants. They armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find, from guns and knives to makeshift explosives and flamethrowers. They huddled together in the bunker, waiting for the mutants to breach the defenses. As the mutants attacked, the survivors fought back with all their might. They fired their guns and threw their grenades, hoping to take down as many mutants as possible. The battle raged on for hours, and the survivors were exhausted and injured, but they refused to give up. Finally, as dawn approached, the mutants began to retreat. The survivors had held their ground, and they had survived, but the cost had been high, and many of them had been killed or wounded in the battle. It started with a few isolated cases of students feeling unwell on the college campus. But within a few days, it became clear that something was seriously wrong. A mysterious disease was spreading through the campus, turning students into mindless zombies. The virus was highly contagious and transmitted through bodily fluids. Within hours of infection, the victims would become feverish and delirious, exhibiting erratic behavior and a strong urge to attack and bite others. It was like something out of a horror movie. The campus was quickly put on lockdown, and the infected students were isolated and quarantined. But despite the efforts of the medical staff, the virus continued to spread, and soon it became clear that the entire campus was infected. Among the infected was a group of friends: Alex, Lily, Jake, and Sarah. They had been roommates since their freshman year and had grown close over the years. But now, they found themselves fighting for survival against their own friends and classmates. The group quickly realized that the only way to stay alive was to avoid the infected at all costs. They barricaded themselves in their dorm room and stocked up on supplies, hoping to wait out the epidemic until a cure could be found. Days turned into weeks, and the situation only grew more dire. The infected were multiplying at an alarming rate, and the resources were running low. The group knew that they couldn't stay hidden forever, and they had to find a way to reverse the effects of the virus. They searched the campus for any clues that could lead them to a cure, but all the labs and research facilities were locked down and guarded by the military. The group realized that they had to take matters into their own hands. They formulated a plan to break into the labs and find a cure. They knew that it was risky and dangerous, but they had no other choice. They gathered their weapons and set out into the infected campus. They fought their way through hordes of zombies, using their wits and teamwork to stay alive. They made their way to the labs and found the research notes of a brilliant scientist who had been working on a cure for the virus. The group quickly got to work, synthesizing the antidote with the help of the notes they had found. It was a risky process, and they knew that they had to get it right the first time. After several hours of intense work, they finally had the antidote. They loaded up their weapons and set out to administer it to the infected students. They faced numerous challenges along the way, but the group remained steadfast and determined. They administered the antidote to as many infected students as they could find, watching as the virus was slowly reversed. In the end, the group was successful in reversing the effects of the virus. The campus slowly returned to normal, and the infected students were cured and returned to their normal selves. But the experience had taken its toll on the group. They had lost friends and witnessed horrors that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. They had fought for survival and emerged victorious, but they knew that they would never be the same again.